This is Long Way to the Top, and I'm your host, Shane Bryan. In the words of the immortal AC/DC, it is harder than it looks. These interviews will give you a glimpse into the lives of the artists that we've sung along with, danced and rocked out to. Some go deep into their past and others celebrate their recent releases. But all of them show that regardless of who you are, it's always a long way to the top. Welcome to the very first Long Way to the Top. This series was developed off the back of both the Bad Boys podcast and the wonderful chats that I've had with artists on LAFM. Some of them are brand new and some of them are resurrected interviews from the archives. In some cases, I'll be joined by my Bad Boys co-host, Andrew Hackett, and then other times, it's just me, the mic, and my musical hero. Even now, after countless interviews, I still get a nervous excitement in chatting with my guests, and I hope that will never change, because it's the admiration for their music that I want you to experience as well, as you embark on your journey with them on their long way to the top. With over 19 albums and 35 years in the business, Joe Satriani has been nominated for 15 Grammys. He's had over 10 million albums sold. He was inspired to play guitar after the passing of Jimi Hendrix. He taught guitar to Kirk Hammett from Metallica, David Bryson from Counting Crows, and most famously, Steve Vai. With a fascination for space and comic books, most notably Marvel's Silver Surfer, and highly acclaimed albums like Not of This Earth and Surfing with the Alien, Joe Satriani joins us on Long Way to the Top. Welcome, Joe.
Wow, thanks. I love that intro. That is great.
And that's all we have time for.
That's right. Who is that guy, Satriani? Oh, my God.
Well, I got to say, mate, I am so excited to have you on the show.
Oh, thank you.
Look, I'm actually a really big fan. I saw you in concert in what I can only remember as the late 80s.
Well, I remember 88 as the first time I visited Australia. I was playing with Mick Jagger. So it was just a fantastic way to get welcomed by a new country and to have the best of times.
Yeah.
Playing with Mick and visiting each city. And we always had so much time in every city, which was great. Wow, what a trip that was. That year in general, I mean, just the release. It's funny, you mentioned Kirk Hammett. Kirk was the last person I gave lessons to around the first week of January of 88.
Yeah.
He went off to continue working with whatever record they were working on at the time, Metallica. And I said, hey, guess what? I'm a solo artist now. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going on tour like next week. Within 2 weeks, I got the gig with Jagger and just like everything wow, it just blew up. It was quite a year.
It must have been a real sort of snowball for you, sort of pinching yourself going, how did I get here?
Yes. But it's funny with all these moments that were very serious, like, pinch yourself moments. There were these funny moments that accompanied them. Like, I remember getting the call, like I had a devastating call from my tour manager before I got the gig with Jagger, telling me that we were losing about $8,000 a week and the tour was going to end in shambles and he had no idea what we were going to do. And I remember thinking, well, I'll play the next gig, tonight's gig, and then I'll figure something out tomorrow. And the next day I get a call from one of my old managers who says, you're not going to believe this, but Mick Jagger is looking for a guitarist and your name came up. And we both laughed for about 3 minutes. Because, we're thinking like, well, I'm never going to get the gig. But yeah. I said, I got to go, right? I just got to go because I got to shake Mick's hand and just hang out with him, see what it's like.
Too right.
But I did get the gig. And then at the end of that day, when I was kind of like hyperventilating, thinking like, oh, my God, I got this gig with Mick Jagger. And Mick says to me like, hey, well, what are you doing here the next couple of days? And I said, well, I'm playing at this little club, the Bottom Line, the next 2 nights. Why don't you come and, jam with us? And he said, oh, okay, I'll be there. What night? And I was like totally stunned. Like I was kidding. You know what I mean? The words came out of my mouth and I thought, oh, what an idiot. You just like asked Mick Jagger to like come to a club. But to his credit, he, to his credit, he said yes, and he showed up, and he just killed him that night.
Wow.
We did Red House by Hendrix, and it was great.
Can you imagine being in the audience and suddenly, Mick Jagger comes in, he says, "Oh, I was invited down by Joe Satriani," I mean, like,
Right.
you would just be like, that doesn't happen every day.
No. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you how I introduced him. I said, okay, thank you very much. We want to play one more song, and I want to bring up a friend of mine. He's a singer. Give him a break. And they had no idea. They literally, because the news hadn't come out that I was playing with him. So they had no idea. And they thought, oh God, a singer, like who wants a singer? Oh. And Mick comes, on stage. He's just wearing jeans and a t-shirt. And slowly the look on their faces when they realize that is Mick Jagger. Oh my God,
That's awesome.
That's so funny.
Now you also, because you've performed with a lot of pretty interesting artists. I'm going to bring an Australian connection back in here now. You sang backing vocals on Crowded House's first album.
Yes.
Now, you're famous for playing guitar and not really singing. How did that happen?
It's the only time I've ever been paid to sing. I honestly, I think that is a firm, truthful statement. The producer of that album, Mitchell Fromm, he's an American, great musician, and we had known him because he came down to see my band, the Squares, play in San Francisco, maybe about 6 months prior to that particular recording. And we wanted him to sign us, to bring us to the label he was working for and produce our album. But he passed on us because we were, in fact, not that good, But he did like this thing I had going with the lead singer in my band where we sang vocals harmonized together, kind of like the Everly Brothers used to do, like in the late 50s, early 60s. And my bass player was a truly gifted singer, and I was just a guy who could hit the notes, but I didn't really have a singer's tone. But he remembered the blend as being quite unusual and unknown to the general public. So I think that when the guys in Crowded House were looking for background vocalists, they didn't want to hire the LA cats who are on everybody's record because it would be obvious that you hired those guys. So Mitchell said, I know these two guys in San Francisco. No one's heard of them. And they sound really different together. And they'll blend in with you guys. So my singer Andy wound up singing with Neil on 6 of the tracks, all the hits actually. I wound up singing all the parts with the drummer. I forget the drummer's name.
Paul Hester.
Yes. So Paul and I don't think he liked me very much, but I do remember we had to sing a lot on the same mic. Just 2 days of work. Nice. It was great to work with Mitchell. He was a really great producer, and we knew the songs were going to be hits. I mean, they were really, really beautiful songs.
Yeah. And a great album, and it's good. I reckon that it was probably something so strong that you were singing on. It was just that you're talking about the melodies and great album. So let's talk about your brand new album that's coming up. And it's out. It's out now.
Now, yes.
What's with the space theme? And actually, let me ask another question first. Are you a comic book fan?
Well, of course. Look, I got my own comic book series, Crystal Planet, right here.
Yes.
Oh, seriously? I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yes. So my partner and I, Ned Evett, who I've known 5 years, he's a guitar player, singer-songwriter. We got this idea about 8 years ago to start a company that would write science fiction stories and try to turn them into just about anything like animated shows or comic books or novels. And we've got about 25 properties now, but Crystal Planet's been taken up by Heavy Metal Magazine and Incendium out of London. And this is issue number 3. And then we'll have graphic novel, the first of 3 that comes out at the end of this year. So, awesome. Yes.
I'm a massive comic book fan. I just can't wait. I'm going to be buying those comics now.
Yes, please do. If you go to satriani.com, you'll find the links for all that kind of stuff. Or our social site.
How did you get the permission to use the Silver Surfer?
Okay, it's a long story. It's a funny one, but I'll try to make it short. I gave my first interview for the yet to be released album, Surfing with the Alien, which was not called Surfing with the Alien. It was called The Lords of Karma. Right. And it was a British journalist. And he was a great interview. He loved the record. And then at the very end, he said, before I go, I just want to let you know, I hate the title of the album. Thank you very much. Goodbye. And I thought, I really thought, that was like the last album anyone would ever let me make. So I thought, I got to change the title. So I called the record company and I said, you guys haven't printed those yet, have you? And it turned out they hadn't. Right. And they were fine with me changing the title. So right then and there, I'm on the phone with the production manager, Jim Kozlowski, who just happens to be 6'4" and has long platinum blonde hair. So I say to him, I go, look, I'm looking at the 10 songs. Surfing with the Alien is the funniest one. They'll know I have a sense of humor. Let's use that. So he says, well, we should put the Silver Surfer on the cover. I didn't know what he was talking about, but long story short, he was a fan. That used to be his nickname because of the way he looked. He lived down the block from Marvel Comics in Manhattan. So the next day he went down there and he said, how much is it going to cost us to license the image? And they were like, oh, we'll give it away because, we're almost out of business here. Oh, and so really? We signed a very lucrative licensing deal to get the image of the Silver Surfer being born for the cover. And that went on until Marvel started to get really powerful. And finally, they made us a deal that we could never say yes to because they wanted us out of using that image for all time. So we had to relinquish it.
So you can't use it anymore. It's gone.
Not to sell albums. Wow. Can't sell albums or T-shirts with that image anymore. So we came up with a better one. But they never copyrighted the Silver Surfer or anything except the board. That is the weirdest thing. The only thing that's, I think, trademarked is the actual surfboard. So, wow. Anybody else out there wants to have fun with those images, go right ahead.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Nice. Okay, I've got to ask, okay, first of all, love the background, love the guitars, the amps. Anybody watching this on video and stuff like that will know exactly what I'm talking about. Look, the obvious question, do you live in a built-up area? And do you have good relations with your neighbors? Because looking at the size of those amps, I tell you what, a building has got to rock every time you switch them on.
Yeah, well, there's in this neighborhood, there's families and kids, and so there's a lot more racket from skateboarding than there is from guitar amps. Right. But most of these, except for maybe the vintage Marshall, they've got master volumes, and I've got some power soak devices that can keep the volume down. I generally play really low volume unless I'm on stage, and then I turn it up really loud. I have to say, I admit it. I play really loud. I really love it. I do wear earplugs on stage, so it's a funny thing to do. Turn up loud and wear earplugs. You think I'd just take the earplugs out and turn down, but thing is, the drums are loud. Yeah, right. Yeah. Kenny Aronoff, Chad Smith, these guys are so damn loud. Yeah. They're like 120 dB every time they hit the snare. Wow. So you got to turn those amps up if you want to play rock and roll, So
absolutely. Do you have a favorite guitar?
Well, I have a favorite model, which is any one of these things that you can see over here.
Yep.
Here's like an in-between one. I can show you the red one. Alder body JS. We've been making JSs for 30 years. Saturate in the bridge, Sustainiac in the neck. So much fun. Nice. I just love the profile. It kind of feels like a vintage Strat neck in a way, but the guitar performs so well. Look at these cool knobs that a guy named Matt Savers made for me. They're Elephants of Mars knobs.
Right. Awesome.
It's crazy. But yeah, so I've got, chrome guitars, orange, purple,
what's the character on the white one?
The white one here, this one here, again, this would be one of the basswood body ones I did in 2016.
That's great.
Look at those guys.
Nice. That's awesome.
It's every time I'm playing, I look down and they're looking at my fingers like, what are you playing? So But yeah, this with the edge tremolo, they really allow me to just totally abuse the guitar, and it stays in tune and sounds great.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I love these guitars.
Love it.
Now, you mentioned about the Elephants of Mars knobs there. You know, your imagery on the album looks great, but more importantly, the sound that is coming out of this new, especially Sahara. Oh my God, what a song!
Thank you so much. Do you know that you're talking about these amps behind me? I didn't use any of the amps on the album, although I intended to. But in the final mixing, we had all these choices on our Pro Tools session files of all the guitar tracks that I recorded. And song after song, the one that we picked was always the SansAmp plug-in guitar. So I, would plug directly into a Millennium Media mic preamp called an HV37, gets me right into Pro Tools. So I would record a pristine, totally clean direct guitar. Wow. Yeah. And then I would monitor with the SansAmp, and then I would record different versions of the SansAmp, which is a really old plugin from the 90s. It's not a modern modeling kind of thing. And when all those tracks went down to Greg and Eric in LA for mixing, they would take those tracks out, put them through, $50,000 Fairchild limiters and Les Paul's very own LA2A and beautiful tube EQs before bringing it back into Pro Tools. And the thing those guitar tracks from super clean to really distorted, they just got huge sounding. Yeah. It's really amazing.
Yeah.
I was really shocked. And it was really a journey of discovery, just that plugin would bring more of my personality out onto the album.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, and you can certainly hear it too. I mean, what an incredible sound on Sahara. The other song that I think is worth mentioning, or there's two. One is the track Faceless. That to me really sort of talks about what we've been through over the last couple of years, right?
Yeah. It wasn't originally about that. It was really, I think, I was sort of inspired by being outside in my neighborhood in San Francisco and all of us being covered up all of a sudden. And I started to think about that in a sort of a tangential way. And I thought it really is devastating when you feel that the person who you really desire to know you for who you really are, for some reason doesn't see you that way. They see a generic person. You become faceless to them. Yeah. And I thought, wow, what if that was, your group of friends or your community or the country where you grow up, or maybe you feel like an alien on the planet. There's so many different ways that you can think that when you become faceless, it's really something that hurts us as human beings. We need to be seen for who we really are. It's like this desire we have for people to know the real us, And so that's what that song was really about.
Yeah. But how often does that happen? Artists put together an amazing track or even a storyline or something like that, which means one thing at the time to them personally, but years later, it takes on an entire new meaning as the listener, the purchaser of whatever it is they're viewing or listening to, engages with it and adds their own personal lifetime-based overlays and everything like that. I mean, it happens all the time.
Yes, it does. When you give your music to the world, it gets reinterpreted in a billion different ways. You can never control that.
Yeah.
Many years ago, I'd written a song that started with me just trying to come to terms with my father's death, and it was really seen as a romantic song by the fans. And I didn't want to spoil it for them,
Sure.
And I remember about a year later, we were on tour in Europe, and we found that there was a German sports program that focused on European football. And they were called Ron, and they invited us on the program to play the song because they had been using the song on their weekly telecast, showing the highlights of soccer that week.
Right.
And, I just remember, this is so weird. My father would be laughing, at the absurdity of it all, but he'd think it was funny too.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Now, look, we know you've got to go. You've got a big lineup of other interviews that you've got to do as well.
Yeah.
Before we go, vinyl, digital, CD, like where can people get the hold of the vinyl versions of this album?
Oh, yeah. There's regular CDs. There's
Nice.
a Digipack CD that I haven't received myself yet. There's a double vinyl package that's great
nice.
that comes with this really weird picture of me with a backpack.
That's great.
Every picture of me is weird, so that's no surprise.
And it's pink.
Vinyl. There's pink, orange, purple, and black. Yeah, and of course you can stream it, download it any way you want. Of course, Ear Music has made it available in every possible format, so that's fantastic.
Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Long Way to the Top. Hit plus or follow to subscribe to the podcast, and head over to Facebook at the Long Way to the Top podcast and give us a like. Keep on rocking, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Long Way to the Top.